Hello, everybody. It's Donna Cravata, and we are here again live with another Real 50 Over 50 interview. And today we have Michele Reynolds. She's a women's empowerment speaker, entrepreneur, and best-selling author of Pause Between the Years. She's got over 27 years of leadership experience in male-dominated industries, and she has navigated personal and professional challenges that led her to where she is today. And what she does now is she helps individuals embrace their true selves by going within, breaking free from societal expectations, learning how to trust their intuition, and embrace their true selves. Welcome, Michele. It's good to have you here today.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you so much for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I love to share stories, and you have stories, first of all, but you
Mhm.
also like to help people with storytelling. So, can
Mhm.
we start with that and the impact of storytelling, both how it
Yeah.
helped and healed you, and how
Mhm.
you help other people bring
Oh,
this to the forefront of their work?
yes, absolutely. Sharing stories is so healing. I know for me to be able to share my story, I really want others to recognize the power that they have within themselves. I mean, really, my mission has always been that to be that light for others. And I believe in sharing our experiences, sharing what's worked for us. Um, Really, we build that purpose that we have to be able to be out there and just to reflect on these moments. I mean, throughout my story today, I really want to touch on three major highlights and key points. One being those aha moments, those pivotal moments that have changed the trajectory of our future forever. I'll talk about that, which really leads you to the awareness, which is so important because again, that's where that self-reflection comes in, and that's where that clarity starts to come in. And then the transition, the transformation that happens after that, to what really brings you back to yourself authentically. So yeah, I think with just all of that, it really helps others. It helps others to not feel alone. It helps others to feel like there's tools out there that they could use when they go through difficult times that are uncertain, challenging times, um, and difficulty times that we have the power within ourselves, and it's not outside of us. It's we don't need that validation from others because we have it within ourselves.
Now, did you know this before you went through your personal
Mm.
challenging times?
I did not know because a lot of times we're in autopilot, right? We're constantly going, we're constantly working, and we really don't take the time to pause. And I believe that it's through these difficult times is when it kind of forces you to pause. If I can I'll give you a little bit of my background. I'm an entrepreneur. So I have an electrical contracting company with my husband. We are co-owners, co-partners, been in business for over 27 years. Back in 2014, we started a utility contracting company, and that was short-lived. It lasted for about 4 years. Essentially, we were performing high voltage work for the major utility companies, and due to financial reasons we closed. So that was a heavy hit. That was a heavy hit for me, and that was probably one of my first aha moments, the pivotal moment which changed my future. Just remember feeling lost. I felt lost at that time, and for me, I had to step back, and I told my husband, I said, I have this feeling, I'm feeling lost. And I think it was because I was so attached to that role that I said to myself, I need to step back and figure out what this feeling is. Why do I feel like I do, feeling lost? And what I can do to kind of navigate, because I felt like there was something more for me. And I really wasn't stepping into that yet. So with me allowing to step myself back, I started self-reflecting. I started to become more aware of how I was feeling. Well, not too long after that was when my husband was diagnosed with cancer. And the first round of it was back in 2018, not too long after we closed our utility company. He was diagnosed with plasmacytoma. which is cancer of the plasma cells located inside the bone marrow. So again, this was another pivotal moment in our lives. At the time, they treated it with radiation and the cancer was gone. But however, they did say that there was a 50% chance he would develop multiple myeloma. And needless to say, that in 2020 was when it did come back. And so at that point, we were off to the races to basically save his life. We are here in Delaware. We were really fortunate to find a really good center, a myeloma center in Little Rock, Arkansas. So we traveled quite a distance to get there. My husband received 2 stem cell transplants, heavy doses of chemo, and we spent 4 months there, 4 months away from our family, our friends, business, everything. And at that moment, I remember feeling I had all these thoughts going through my mind, because remember, like, this was right during COVID was when he was also diagnosed. So also with that, I couldn't go into the hospital to help him. I couldn't go in there to do anything, basically. So I spent a lot of time at the apartment. And I remember having this conversation with our youngest. We have 3 adult kids. And I remember talking to our daughter, and I said to her, you know, I have so many thoughts going through my mind, but I'm not sure how to go about, you know, handling this. And she just told me 3 words. She's like, Mom, just write. But she also said, just write like no one's going to ever see it. Well, right there, that was a big pivotal moment, because that allowed me, it gave me permission to write and to just dump everything, all my worries, all my doubts on paper.
Yeah.
So, Donna, that's exactly what I did. The next day I woke up at 4 a.m. I started writing. And these write-ins at first were more like a journal style write-in. It was more of an observation of what my husband was going through. Now, unintentionally, and again, I always go by a feeling with everything. If something feels right, I do it. It doesn't have to make sense, but I just follow that feeling. And I remember writing, and as I was writing, my writing started to turn more into gratitude, into appreciation, into seeing things in a whole different light than I've ever had before. And it went again from, you know, how I was feeling, more so grief and sorrow is how it started. But then it kind of transitioned into more of appreciation and of everything around us, you know, not only our loved ones, but, you know, myself helping my husband, but everything. And I kept up with it and kept up with it. So down the road, months later, I started to stack up all of these different write-ins. And that's when, through encouragement from my friends and my family, they're like, Michele, you need to put this into a book and send it out there in the world. And so in November of 23 is when I had it published.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, you know, what kind of messages have you received from people that have read the book?
Well, you know, in the book, I touch on so many different things. And I think people were just appreciative of the my perception of how I look at everything. You know, going through these difficult times, I often would talk about, you know, there's beauty in pain, right? There's beauty in these difficult times that we go through. And my book reflects on that. So I think a lot of people were so thankful that they could read a book out of something that started out of cancer, something really bad, but I turned it into something really inspirational. So I didn't want my book to be about cancer. I wanted it to be about life itself and all these different life experiences that we experience, but to change your perception into something challenging, dig into it and be curious and ask yourself questions as why is this happening, instead of being a victim, right? And turn it around and what can I learn from this? So these pivotal moments and aha moments in my life that didn't go right? They didn't go the way I wanted it to. And health wise too, with my husband, when you are faced with these type of issues, you at some point say to yourself, I need to surrender to this. And it's not a weakness, but it's also a sign of strength, saying, I accept this that's coming at me. And how can I turn this around so that I can um, heal myself also, but provide clarity so that we can get through this and understand it in a better way to help each other.
And did you have any of that going on in your life before this experience with your husband's health?
No, 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 no. No, not at all. And I think, you know, when I talk a lot about going within, right, and becoming your authentic self, these moments in our lives, right, as we get older, these moments in our life have so much meaning. But if we don't stop to really take a look and create space, right, and silence to think about these things, we're always going to keep our old habits in place.
Yeah.
Like I was always more of I call myself a type A personality, recovering perfectionist, right? So I always wanted to be in control of everything. And going through all these different processes, I was completely out of control. And I know sometimes when we are that have that kind of personality, we want more so to control.
Mhm.
And when I surrendered to all that, that was the best thing that ever happened because I trusted and I created safety nets for myself.
Yeah, and when you keep going, you can't kind of go below the surface of the spin, right? Because you're in
Right.
this spin of dealing with the next thing and dealing with the next thing and dealing with the next thing, and there's no room for that other stuff to come through.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And I think just creating that space. And I think a lot of times people are fearful of that, right? Nervous of that silence. I used to be so uncomfortable with that silence. And now it's like it's my best friend because that's when clarity comes about.
Yeah. Well, there's also like when you're going through a situation like that, you want to feel like you're doing something.
Hmm.
And if you stop doing, you feel like you're letting down that person that you're
Yes.
fighting for. You were fighting for your
Yes.
husband. Um,
Yes.
but you have to do that, otherwise you'll burn yourself out. And so often the answers that you need are going to come through that quiet time that
Yeah,
you can hear something more than the churn.
exactly. And it's just being okay with being okay. Like we always want to be better than okay. And I just remember at one point going through this with my husband is I just wanted us to be okay. And I think that's part of that safetiness, right? That you have to create for yourself because you feel unsafe. You feel like this tidal wave is coming at you and you can't breathe. And then once you release that surrender and say, you know what, we're going to be okay no matter what, it brings that strength from within. So that's part of that going within is really connecting to that and creating that feeling of no matter what happens, we're going to be here, we're going to be fine, everything's going to be okay.
And how is he today?
He's doing wonderful,
Good.
cancer free today, and all is well. And it's one of those things that when someone is diagnosed with cancer, even though they're cancer free today, it's been 5 years, there's always that chance of it coming back. So it has changed our life drastically, but in a good way, if that makes sense,
Mhm.
to where we appreciate life, we appreciate others, appreciate each other, and we don't put things off anymore because um, it can happen to any one of us. And prior to this, I guess I just never thought that. I thought, we're going to be here forever, right? We're going to
That happens to other people.
right, right. And when that happened to us, it was whoa, it hit pretty hard. And I said, you know what? At any moment, like that's why being in the present moment and appreciation is so so important. And you look at life completely different, like you've never had before. And we don't put things off. We vacation, we do things now instead of waiting 5, 10 years from now. Yeah, it's just so important, but it changed it in a good way.
And how has this all translated into your work? Were you doing, your empowerment work before your husband's illness, or did this
Um,
come
well,
from that?
it's interesting, Donna, because I'm out there as a owner of electrical contracting company, right? And now I'm also pivoting to this empowerment speaker, but that's always been me. I
Yeah.
just like I suppressed it for so many years
Well, did
because
I have a question about that. Did you, like, actually suppress it, or did you just not know it was there?
I um I let it out at times. This is interesting because years ago with our electrical contracting company, we have all primarily male employees, and I would often share quotes with them. So quotes for me were always huge years ago. Always that positivity, always that let's dig deep into this and talk
Mhm,
about this in more of a mindful way.
mhm,
And so it's always been there, and that's always something that I loved to do. That was a passion of mine. So throughout this whole process, when I started allowing myself that space and time, I came back to that and I realized that that's where my energy lied, right? That's where, I love to be that light for others. I love to have conversations where we can lift others by sharing our own experiences. And now what I do is along with, I do more of the back end operations of our company, but I also pour all this inspiration and empowerment into, having conversations with our employees as well. So it has a positive effect on our company. And also, what I do now is sharing my story on podcast and speaking events. So yeah, it feels good. It's a good place to be right now.
mm,
Mhm.
yeah, and like, how has it impacted your business? How have the electricians taken to your quotes?
Well, I think it's interesting because, I always think it's more so for women, but a lot of men need it as much too. And it helps them to open up even more so about their own emotions and what they're going through.
Mm,
So I find it very interesting that a lot of men are very interested in hearing and having these types of conversations that go a little deeper than normally, we would.
did they read your book?
Yes, I gave them all my book and yes, they share it, they share it with their family, so it just makes me feel good that they
That's
can
good.
spread
And
this around for sure.
that's gotta be so rare in that industry.
Mhm. Mhm. Oh yeah, we have our company is small, so the employees in there, they're like family.
Mhm,
That's how I treat them, and so it's a good feeling to be able to share what I do outside of the electrical part of it, their business, and then also bring it in there too, and be part of the meetings that we have.
mhm.
Yeah.
So, one of the, um one of the things that I always find is such a big, motivator
Mhm.
for, I mean, just really about anything, and you mentioned the word a couple of times, is curiosity.
Mm.
How does that play into the work that you do?
Well, I think by nature, I've always been someone to ask lots of questions. As a child, I remember growing up and they would call me question mark because I would always ask a question, right? If you tell me to do something, I need to know why.
Yeah.
Why do I need to do this? Right?
My mom used to tell me, "Why is a crooked letter?"
Right? Yes. And like, I don't know, just do it. But yes, for me, I was like, no, I need to understand it so that I can make sense of it as to why. So curiosity is such an important thing to have because everything we go through, I think it's so important to not be a victim, right? Not be the victim and say, why is this happening to me? But be more curious and say, okay, what is the meaning behind this? There's something bigger happening as to why this didn't work out or this happened. And even when it goes to health, right? Nobody wants what happens to us when we go through these difficult times, but again, to not be that victim and to turn it around and say, how can I learn from this?
Mhm.
What good can I take out of it? I know there's some good in here. What can I take out of it? Um, but yeah, there's just so much. And then again, there's so many tools that I use daily to help me to stay grounded, because it's not like we're ever to the point in life where we say we got this, right? Hey, I'm healed. I can
Yeah.
handle anything comes our way, right? Because life is cyclical. We're going to have these ups and downs. We're going to have these moments of difficulty again. And so, but I think when we have our tools in place, it kind of helps us to better navigate and recover from the next time things happen to us. So for me, like the tools that I use every single day, and these may resonate with some and may not, but for me, it's meditation. Meditation is huge for me. Now that can come in different forms. It can come in, taking a walk in the park. It can be just being silent and trying to make sense of your thoughts and not to put too much pressure on, let me figure this out, but this is interesting, right? So just being curious, right? Stop, like take that pressure off of yourself. Because I think we always try to fix ourselves, right? We're not broken. This is life. And if we look at it and say, okay, give yourself some compassion and grace for what you go through and return that to yourself, because it's so so important. We're so hard on ourselves and overjudge ourselves for these things, but to take that pressure off. So meditation is one thing, and of course education, like whatever we go through in life, educate yourself on it. I remember when my husband was diagnosed with this type of cancer, and people would come to me and say, Michelle, how can I help? And I would say, you know what, just educate yourself. Educate yourself on this disease, and that way we can be a resource for each other. We can come together and talk about how we can battle this and go forward. Um,
And you
but
don't have to say the same thing over and over again.
yes, yes, exactly, exactly. And people don't feel as frightened, right? When you educate yourself, you learn it about it a little bit more, so you
Mhm.
don't feel so frightened. It takes that fear kind of fear away. But also, and then of course, exercise, right? Physical activity, that's so important. You have to move. So again, it goes back to even taking those walks, you're moving, right? But you're relieving that stress, and it helps you to better be equipped to handle things coming your way. Hmm.
And when you're working with, clients or you're speaking,
Hmm.
how do you, um, connect them to their own stories, like, to be able to pull their stories out of them? Because most people don't know how to do that.
No, no, it's embracing uncertainty. I talk about that a lot, right?
Mhm.
Embracing uncertainty. And I know we all can resonate with that, and so I think it's interesting because when I share my story and I'm very open and very transparent, it allows others to do that.
Mhm.
And there really isn't a difficulty with others opening up, because it's almost like you're giving them that portal, that leeway to say, okay, I'm sharing my stuff. So I feel safe enough to be able to open up and share what's going on in their lives. So I think what I talk about is universal to so many people out there. And who doesn't want these tools that maybe could help them, or at least help them to be a little more curious and say, okay, I'm going to start asking myself these questions when I'm approached by an uncertain situation or difficulty, and how I can go about handling this. Because our habits, of course, those habits that have worked in the past may not work now. So it's good to kind of reflect and look back at those habits and say, okay, these kind of things didn't work for me, but now maybe I see it in a different light. And how
Mhm.
can I move forward and do it differently so that this makes sense and I'm not suffering? Because, you know, we are going to experience pain in our lives, but we don't necessarily have to suffer. Suffering, I think, is more of a choice. And again, it goes back to how we respond or react to things that happen to us.
Mhm. And how has, like, you making this change, going through that difficult period in time, like,
Mhm.
how did that impact your husband and your children?
I think it helps so much when we start to work more so on ourselves, right? And we start to heal, that positive effect just kind of dominoes onto the rest of the people around you. It's that energy. And I believe that that's what happens. That's what happened to our family. My husband's always been, he's a very strong person, and he's one of those, I learned from him so much. He tackles whatever comes his way, and it's like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're dealt with this. Let's move forward and do what we got to do. I, on the other hand, was more of the worrier, and like I
Mhm,
said, in control. This was not supposed to happen. So for this whole situation that happened, I really focused back on myself and said, okay, how do I help myself so I can be that positive light for others in a good way? So I think our energies just kind of magnitude and vibrate with each other, and it helps. It helps
mhm.
so much.
Yeah, because, I mean, it's really scary, and,
Mhm.
I to go through that, and the family around you, the kids around you, you don't know who's thinking what, and
Yeah.
trying to keep track of all of that and keep everybody healthy and sane and feeling safe and secure. It's a big load to carry.
Well, Donna, you know what? I'm glad you said that because it reminded me too, as a caregiver, right? Like as a mother, right? We're always caring for others. And of course, when something like this happens, you are that caregiver,
Mhm,
wanting to help that person to heal and get better. But I just remember going through a period when I was so, I was just, everything, my attention was completely on my husband for getting him better. And I forgot about myself. And I remember going through a painful situation where I was getting chest pains, and a lot of physical things were happening to me. And I went to the doctors, and thank God everything was fine. But I was just stressed. It's a lot of stress you're going through. So it wasn't until then that I said, "Whoa, okay." When I felt like my husband was better, he's on the right track. Everything's good now. I could kind of like, whew, take a deep breath. And but what I was realizing I wasn't doing is I wasn't really breathing. I was doing that shallow breathe and that, oh my God, like anticipating the next thing to
I
happen.
knew you were gonna say that.
And and that's when I said, okay, Michelle, this can't be happening because I don't want to go downhill with my health. So again, it's that going back to yourself, right? Okay, what am I doing? That awareness, and how can I help myself? So we have to remember as caregivers, if there's caregivers out there that may be listening today, that remember to pour that back into yourself too, to take care of yourself, because that's so, so important, because it's so easy to forget about, who you are when you're caring so much for someone else.
Yeah, and breathe.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's an easy thing, right? And we forget to
Mhm.
like do it.
Yeah,
Our bodies are so tight and tense, and it's like, no, yeah. Yep.
life can be very hard. Um, so we're almost at the end here, but, I like to wrap up these interviews with a wisdom bomb.
Mhm.
You've just been dropping them for the last 30 minutes, but something actionable that people could take with them and do right away and incorporate into their world.
I mean, I think I would say never be afraid to be who you were meant to be in this world. I've come to the point, like I said, where it's, you want to be as authentic as you can be, as real. Don't hide any parts of you from anyone. It's so powerful to be able to put yourself out there completely and wholeheartedly, and to be curious. and to take these moments of difficult times and to look at them a little differently and learn from them, you know. But this, all of these situations and experiences gives us the power that we already have in us. We have these gifts within us, but people just don't recognize them. And until you do, that's when you can feel completely whole, right? And non-judgmental of yourself, but to say to yourself that you finally circle back to the person that you were always meant to be. And if it took all these bad experiences to happen, you know, you've taken the good out of them, and you're giving it back to the world, you know. And I think that's the way I kind of pay it forward, is by sharing my story and what things work for me, and to be that light for others.
Well, that's beautiful.
Mhm.
Um, Everybody, please go check out Michelle's website, michelleinspires.com, and check out her book. And if you're booking speakers, this is what she does. And thank you for sharing your story and sharing how you turned things around, things that were really dark and hard into something that was positive
Mhm.
and full of light.
Oh, thank you so much, Donna. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you. If you are watching on the replay and you've got comments, questions, ideas, stories, just tag us and we'll come back and keep the conversation going.
Mhm.
And we will be back next Wednesday with another interview. And enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everybody. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.